When you speak the name DAngelo, a few things might come to mind. Some might say he's the godfather of neo soul. Others might say he's a musical genius. Those closest to him know that at one point or another, he has been deeply troubled. One thing that is undeniable is that his presence undoubtedly changed R&B and his legacy remains untouched. It's always been about the music for DAngelo. His career blossomed from nothing except for a deep passion and love for the art. Before the Devil's Pie singer took a nearly decade-long hiatus from the spotlight, DAngelo's debut album Brown Sugar marked the birth of the neo-soul genre in 1995. It paved the way for artists like Erykah Badu, Jill Scott, Maxwell, and Lauryn Hill. The Grammy-nominated album is regarded by most fans and critics as nearly flawless. His second studio album, Voodoo, was met with much commercial and critical praise. In no small part due to one of his top singles, untitled How Does It Feel, it was perhaps the very success of this song, and more specifically, its infamous music video that caused DAngelo to disappear from industry and find himself overcome by his vices. During that time, the talent of the Brown Sugar singer was overshadowed by his demons. Here's why DAngelo hated his biggest hit. In a time where mainstream 90s R&B production was heavily digitalized, neo soul entered with more authentic instrumentation and more complex lyrical content. DAngelo spearheaded a renaissance of black genre-bending music. As trailblazing as neo soul became, DAngelo himself has ironically shunned the genre, citing it as a marketing tactic. In a lecture with the Red Bull Music Academy, he said, "I don't want to dissociate and I respect for what it is, but anytime you put a name on something, you put it in a box." He said, "You want to be in a position where you can grow as an artist. You never want to be told you're a neo-soul artist. Why don't you do neo-soul?" He added, "I never claimed that I do neo-soul. When I first came out, I said I do black music." This would not be the last time when DAngelo's personal convictions conflicted with the labels that the industry would put on him. DAngelo would become one of the most iconic singers of our time, but he couldn't escape the peaks and valleys that would plague his life and career. While fans were looking forward to the follow-up of his platinum-selling Brown Sugar album, what came next for the sultry singer was a nearly 5-year hiatus due to his writer's block. He told Entertainment Weekly in 2000, "The thing about writer's block is that you want to write so fucking bad, but the songs don't come out that way. They come from life, so you gotta live to write." It wasn't until the birth of his son, Michael, that he had with his then girlfriend and fellow neo-soul artist Angie Stone, that he got inspired to begin writing in 1998. What came from his sudden inspiration 2 years later was his sophomore studio album, Voodoo. There was pressure to deliver after 5 years and such a successful debut. Voodoo was well worth the wait. Although it was a totally different direction from his preceding album and R&B in general, it was very well received. DAngelo's mission was to push the envelope. He used influence from the greats like Jimi Hendrix and Marvin Gaye to create his own funky hip-hop rock and soul-infused sound. He produced most of the album himself at Jimi Hendrix Electric Lady Studios in New York City. Its biggest single, possibly one of DAngelo's most notable songs to date, untitled How Does It Feel, came with an especially eye-catching video that added to the success of the album. According to its director, Paul Hunter, this video was made for women. It featured nothing but a seemingly nude DAngelo accentuating his muscular build against a black background in a way that would make one feel that he was singing to them, for them, and about them. Let's just say it did what it was supposed to do. When DAngelo started out, he was, as his manager said, not a sexy dude, but a real musician who wears glasses and plays video games. So even after becoming as fit as he'd ever been from intense workouts with celebrity trainer Mark Jenkins, DAngelo was still anxious about the How Does It Feel video. In 2008, Jenkins told Spin magazine, "You gotta realize, he never looked like that before in his life. To be somebody who was so introverted, and then in a matter of 3 or 4 months, to be so ripped. Everything was happening so quickly." The video contributed to much of the success of the single. It garnered new fans and traffic to the song and album. It won awards and spent countless weeks on BET and MTV video countdowns. But DAngelo and his camp weren't exactly thrilled about what came from the audience's response to his hot new image. His manager told Spin, "I'm glad the video did what it did, but he and I were both disappointed because to this day, in a general populace's memory, he's the naked dude." DAngelo went on to tour the album with his band, the Soultronics, led by Questlove, who also produced the album. The Voodoo World Tour was a 3-hour experience that sold out every city in the first half. In contrast to Brown Sugar Tour, where a more calm DAngelo performed mostly behind his keyboard, at this show, you can find him dancing, engaging with the audience, really putting on a show. But the audience on this tour wanted a little more than just the music as usual. There were some fans who may have found DAngelo through his latest tantalizing visual. According to tour members, they couldn't get through a song without a woman screaming for him to take off something or throwing provocative clothing on stage. This type of attention affected DAngelo in a way that wasn't good for him or the other tour members. Tour manager Alan Leeds revealed that DAngelo became overwhelmed thinking about how much of this fan base was because of how he looked rather than the music. It took away his confidence because he wasn't convinced of why any given fan is supporting him. Band leader and friend Questlove recalls his experience with DAngelo on the Voodoo tour. Some nights he'll look in the mirror and say, "I don't look like the video." He'll literally hold the show up for a half an hour just to do crunches. We will hold a show for an hour and a half if he didn't feel mentally prepared or physically prepared. Some shows got canceled because he didn't feel physically prepared, but it was such a delusion. DAngelo grew more angry, more resentful, more shows were canceled. For various reasons, including his personal issues, at least 3 weeks worth of shows were canceled. This triggered his heavier drinking. While things were supposed to be looking up for the soul superstar after the tour, things were actually starting to fall apart. After the Voodoo tour in 2001, DAngelo was set to take some time off at home in Virginia. He told GQ magazine, "When I got back home, it wasn't that easy to just be. I think that's the thing that got me in a lot of trouble. Me trying to just be Michael, the regular old me from back in the day, and me fighting the whole sex symbol thing. You know, hey, I ain't DAngelo today. I'm just plain old Mike, and I just want to hang out with my boys and do what we used to do. But damn, those days are fucking gone." Then his close friend Fred Jordan passed away by suicide. DAngelo didn't know how to handle this well and even recalls frequent nightmares after the incident. His uncle, who owned the record collection that he first studied music through, also passed, as well as his beloved grandmother, which encouraged him to do music. The drinking and substance abuse worsened. Any plans for his live album and the Soultronics album were done. He began a slow process of recording new music over the next couple of years. He was still drinking and using as he attempted to produce and play every instrument on the record himself. His engineer and close friend Russ Elevado was the only person he'd worked with. It was a very different time than Voodoo sessions. DAngelo revealed, "I was in a studio, but I was also partying a lot. A little too much. I liked cocaine because I could be a bit of an antisocial. It made me really open up and talk. It was good in the beginning, but it got out of hand. For the first time, people started to go, 'Yo, man, you got to get it together.'" Aside from drawing inspiration from Prince and having full creative control, DAngelo worked alone because he didn't want anyone seeing him in the condition he was in. Those who heard the songs raved about him. They were amazing, but they were unfinished. The longer it took to create, the more the label grew impatient and ultimately cut funding for the album, which was set to release in 2004. In January 2005, DAngelo was arrested in Richmond and charged with disturbing the peace, possession of marijuana, carrying a concealed weapon, driving while under the influence, and driving without a license. And that's when the mugshots came out. This was one of the only images the public has seen of the troubled singer in the years, aside from a prior mugshot in 2002, and he looked much more overweight and unhealthy. Save for a few features and cover work, DAngelo hadn't put out any new music and disappeared from the industry. At this point, his manager got a tour bus, drove from New York to Virginia to pick DAngelo up and head to rehab in California. The bus was to avoid being seen on planes, but the rehab visit wouldn't stick. DAngelo's manager has set up a $3 million deal with J Records, which is now RCA Records for DAngelo, that unfortunately would not go through after D was in a near fatal car accident that left him in the hospital. At this point, DAngelo has split from Trenier and Alan Leeds as managers alienated pretty much everyone around him, including Questlove, and has sunk as low as he could ever go. In 2006, he made a life-changing call to Gary Harris, the man who first signed him. Harris called in a favor to a high-powered manager, Irving Azoff, who agreed to foot the bill for a $40,000 rehab stay at the Crossroads in Antigua. Getting him there was a struggle. Harris showed up to DAngelo's Richmond mansion to liquor bottles scattered across the kitchen counter. It took 4 days to get him to Puerto Rico. Leaving a hotel room in Puerto Rico took 2 more days and an empty-out minibar. Just before Harris threw up his hands and hightailed it out of San Juan, DAngelo broke down and cried and agreed to head to Antigua. It was a slow start after his month in Antigua. He took steps forward and managed to ink a new deal with J Records, and then took steps back, being arrested for solicitation after offering a female undercover police officer $40 for oral sex in Manhattan. In a heart-to-heart conversation, Questlove revealed that he had kept his distance because he feared that DAngelo was hell-bent on following footsteps of their idols. Any person who dealt with any substance abuse, it's an ongoing thing. That's the mantra. One day at a time, right? So you're going to have good days and bad days, but for the most part, I have a grip on it. January 26, 2012 will mark his first day back on stage since the Voodoo World Tour in the year 2000. In Paris, France, after an impeccable performance as an in-shape, healthy DAngelo closes his set with the infamous untitled How Does It Feel, which he had performed at his first 2 European tour stops. The crowd sings along, to which DAngelo responds, "Thank you so much." In 2014, DAngelo would drop his third album, Black Messiah, in the light of the Ferguson and Eric Garner cases. It would debut at number 5 on the Billboard 200. One thing that his religious roots taught him is that there is no light without darkness, no good without evil. Angie Stone summed it up when she said, "You can't take too much away from the gift itself." I'm sure there's still some fear there, because it's been a long time out of the spotlight. And when all the spotlight he got lately has been negative, there's a rebirth of some kind that needs to take place. The rebirth started at a rehab center in Antigua and ended on a stage in Paris. Redemption, a concept that the godfather of neo-soul, DAngelo, is all too familiar with. Faced with pressure that many would fold under, he may have bent, but he didn't break, and deserves applause. When the industry wanted their slice of the devil's pie, DAngelo stayed true to himself and his respect for the art. Marvin Gaye would be proud. Stay up to date with all the latest news and comedy by subscribing to our YouTube channel, and follow Comedy Hype on all social media platforms, and look out for new original content on our new streaming services at comedyhype.com. For Hype Plus, I'm Terrence Sims.